Hello, dear beloveds. I am just trying something here new, so please forgive me as I figure all of this tech out. I'm wondering if I can go live here. Hello, dear beloveds. I am just trying something here new, so please forgive me as I figure all of this tech out. I'm wondering if I can go live here. So what we're doing at the moment is I'm going to see if I'm going to be able to go live in two places at once, which is here on YouTube and here on Facebook at the same time. This is a bit of a tech challenge, only exacerbated by the fact that it's currently about 400 degrees in Melbourne and my air conditioner is broken. Can you see? I think I might just need to get myself, okay, I'll just do that. So let me just see what happens if I go live here as well, and we'll see if we can make this work. If not, you can all join me on Facebook. So we'll just have a quick look here. Let's see how we go. Sorry, this is not the world's most exciting TV at the moment. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am a few minutes early for the scheduled webinar. We're talking about what it is to live without fear. And really what I am most excited about this topic is in regards to how our fearlessness is what creates or optimizes our intuition. Now, I say intuition, but I have to say that really what fearlessness does is optimizes our reality. So we are never in any part of our life living survival mode lives. We are living in a state of optimized reality. And we are currently living inside of borrowed limits. That's a term that I like to use, which I hope kind of encapsulates or describes that idea of we are living inside other people's beliefs. So we haven't necessarily investigated why our lives have any limits to them whatsoever. And if we're living a limited reality in any way, shape, or form, then there's a very good chance that we have not optimized our life. We're just living in a survival mode. So what we're going to do together in this time is I just want to really talk about the idea of getting fearless and getting beyond belief, and what it is to be fearless to me is to live beyond belief. But in addition to that, what is the relationship between fear and intuition? Because it's very, very close to my heart. It's very close to everything that I teach. In fact, the book that I wrote, Spiritually Fierce, one of its alternative titles in its earlier iterations was called Fearlessness, or Fearless, I can't remember, one of the two. They say the same thing. But the idea is that if you want to have an optimized intuition, if you want to have an optimized life, if you want to be living a reality that is above and beyond anything that is possible, then it is absolutely only one thing that you need to do, and that is to meet your fear, because your fear is the illusion. The fear is the made up stuff, and we behave as though it is real. And in order to replace the belief that fear is real, we have to have something greater than that. We have to have a connection to something greater than that limited human consciousness. And what is greater than that limited human consciousness, of course, is infinite consciousness, or God consciousness, or optimized consciousness. So we are learning as we move into our intuitive intelligence how to break the habit of thinking small. And I wrote about this in my latest ebook, which is called You Were Made to Be Glorious. It's that idea that we have a habit, we're habituated to living small realities. We accept far less than we are worth because we don't even know what it would look like, what it would feel like to be optimized. And so I really, really want to share with you this evening some discussion about how we might do that. And then what we're going to do after this, if you want to, let me just quickly press play on that. So we've got two things going on at once. What I'm going to do straight afterwards in my group, I Am Spiritually Fierce, and this is very exciting. And I think we've got one of our actually, I'm not sure about that. I was going to say we'll make sure that we add you to the group. We're going to go into a healing. So tonight I'm going to share some theory and some ideas and some of my ways that I have met and released my fear to live an optimized life. And then in my group, I'm Spiritually Fierce, we're actually going to do a group healing if I don't melt before then. I think I look a little bit like I might melt, but I promise you I won't melt. So I just want to pull it back a little bit, and I want to sort of begin at the beginning. For those of you who are awakening to we all need this reminder. We need to be reminded again and again and again of our true nature, because everything around us is telling us a story of who and what we are that is limited and finite and separate. And that we'll just have some water here. Sorry, my Facebook Live just froze. So give me 1 minute and we'll get back to it. And we're talking about the nature of fear and fearlessness and how it relates to our intuition. So it isn't just the borrowed beliefs of our parents or our family or our partners. It's this big unmet fear in the subconscious basement of all those in our reality, of all those who have lived before us, of all human time. We've been raised on a diet of believing that there is not enough for everyone, and that we will only have what we need if someone else is missing out. And so we then make judgments around that. Let me try again. We're going to start here again because that is just not working. All right. We'll see if this one looks a little bit better. My apologies, dear beloveds, if you dropped out of the Facebook Live. We're broadcasting to YouTube at the same time, so we seem to have hit a little bit of a techno wall, but I think it's more about my Wi-Fi than it's about anything else. So we're just going to jump straight back into it. So we are living inside of borrowed beliefs, and those beliefs are part of the collective unconscious of humanity. So it's not just what you've inherited from your family, although it likely is. It's not just what you've inherited from your partner. It's not just what you've inherited from the people you work with or you know, your playmates as a child. It's the collective subconscious fear program that is dominant in our reality, which tells us that there is not enough for everyone and that we are limited and finite. In those conditions, intuition cannot thrive. Intuition cannot thrive when we have not placed the idea of intuition being part of our connection to that infinite consciousness. So intuition for and of itself, intuition for advantage over others, or to be able to diagnose someone else's pain, or anything that is just about I've got power and I know how to give you something that you don't know how to give yourself, is not actually the purpose or benefit or real potentiality of intuition. Intuition as a symptom, or to use a word, someone said to me the other day, symptom's a bad thing, Ricky. Symptom's not something you want to have, but as a side effect, if you like, of connecting to there is a greater purpose to my life. I am part of something greater, and that is the true meaning of my life, is to find out what that greater power is and to make it my own, to not think in terms of separation, of finite, you know, there's not enough for everyone, of lack mentality, but to believe and to know it to be true, that as I meet my own fear and release my fear, not only do I optimize my own life, I optimize the world for all others. And an optimized life is, for me, so simple. It is, have I met my fear? I remember Katie Cruz talking about Wim Hof at one of the third level trainings, and that example is just so strong with me. You know, most of us are raised to believe that the kinds of conditions that this man puts himself in, he's known as the Iceman, he can put his body into conditions that would kill most of us. What if that's just a borrowed belief? What if we have just been told that our limits are far greater than what they actually are, and that in fact we are unlimited, even to the point where our bodies would not die if they were subjected to the kinds of conditions that Wim Hof subjects himself to, that it's simply a matter of training this. And this is where we get into what is fearlessness and intuition. How does this all connect with the optimized human being? It is the truth of intuition is that it is a sign that you are learning to live beyond the dimension of form and matter, and that you are optimizing your consciousness to not think only in 3D, which is form, terms, and you're starting to think in 5D, pure energy or pure consciousness terms. That is what an optimized human being is. If I am pure consciousness, then I could sit in, you know, sub-zero conditions in my body if I made a choice not to believe what people tell me is the dominant paradigm, is that my body would die if I subjected myself to what Wim Hof subjects himself to, is actually just a borrowed belief. And we see this all the time in religion, where we are raised in a particular kind of religious paradigm, and we're taught or told that to be, you know, to think this way, or to dress that way, or to be a woman, or to eat meat, or to donate blood, or whatever it is, would somehow be of harm to you. All belief is effectively limiting our unconscious or consciousness as a whole. So our unconscious, our subconscious, and our conscious mind all working together. When that consciousness is opened up and given back to God or given to our infinite nature, there is no belief that could harm us. There's nothing that could harm us. So it's really about, yes, breaking the rules, the bullshit rules, as Vishen Lakhiani says, is, why do we question some things and not other things? Why do we even believe in form when quantum physics is telling us every single day that we are actually pure energy? Why are we still existing inside the limits of believing that we are form dominant when we can read the best leading edge science that tells us actually that we are pure energy, and the least interesting, most dense part of us has just taken on form, and that's the slowest vibrating particles of matter. And in fact, our infinite nature, even our energy body, our energy field is so much bigger and much more magnificent and capable of so much more. So at every level, the capacity to question comes from a kind of fearlessness. I hope this is making sense. I hope the heat isn't just kind of making me sound rambly. Fear is what is used to stop us from questioning. And I'm not just talking about questioning whether you should eat meat or whether you should, do this rather than that. I'm talking about whether you are willing to consider the possibility that you are God or infinite consciousness. What is on the other side of your fear is your unlimited self. And that kind of power is so overwhelming for most of us that we don't even know that we won't go to meet our fears, our unquestioned beliefs, in order to prevent ever having to take responsibility for our lives. And so I feel very much that even when we're saying, okay, could I live beyond the belief that because I'm a woman, I'm not worth enough and my self-worth is in tatters and blah, 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 or because I had a I was parented badly that I'm never going to be able to trust other people. What if we just went way beyond that? What if we went quantum on this shit and we actually said, what about questioning the truth that my physical body is the extent and limit of what I am? What if I could cause healing just by holding a different belief at a deep enough level, accessing a deep enough level of my subconscious mind that I can change form in an instant? Or maybe it'll take 6 months, but still, what if I had that capacity? What if every single thing about my physical reality is just a reflection of my belief about it? We talk about, or science has talked about for some time, quantum physics and spiritual scientists, the holographic nature of the quantum universe. And so when we think about that, what the holographic argument is that everything we see is a projection of our consciousness. Just as when Luke first saw Princess Leia as a holographic projection coming out of R2-D2, we are living in a reality that is purely light and sound presenting itself in accordance with our belief. Now, the reason I want to talk about this tonight and leading into the discussion of fearlessness is because I believe that what causes us, and I'm not alone in this belief, to be more form, more dense, more unable to imagine the possibility of what our reality could be is our fear. So fear, literally at the quantum level, slows down our subatomic particles so that we are more dense. We lack the capacity or the imaginative capacity to see our consciousness behave in different kinds of ways. And if we think about imagination not as fantasy, but as the way that we build reality, you can see where I'm going here. That if we become, and I use this quote in the third level teaching, and I'm not sure who it comes from, but concretized in our imagination, so that we have become so solid, such solid physical matter that we cannot see, feel, know, or hear our infinite nature. When we open to our intuition, when we meet our fear consistently and we open to our intuition, we begin to break free of that density, that solid 3D reality, and we begin to inhabit more energy. Joe Dispenza says it's speeding up, or our particles are faster then. I talk about it as being higher and lighter. It doesn't really matter what language you use, the image is the same. Fear slows us down. Fear makes us more dense. Fear reduces our capacity to think imaginatively about what is possible, so that we keep repeating patterns of behavior because they're safe and they're known. When we meet our fear and we start to emancipate our energy field and our physical body from that fear, and we move into fearlessness, we are literally lightening the load. We are raising ourselves from that dominant physical reality, the dominant 5 senses. We stop thinking in terms of our dominant 5 senses, and we move into a relationship with our sense. That is the power, the beauty, and the benefit of becoming intuitively intelligent, is that you emancipate yourself from the dominant fear paradigm. You do not do it for yourself alone. You do it for all of those who are currently residing inside limits. Some of us live in what we think are fairly unlimited limits. We think that we're quite open-minded and we think imaginatively. We haven't even begun to touch the surface, my darlings. We have not even begun to meet what is possible for us. And people like Wim Hof do show us extreme versions of what is possible. You may not want to attain that level of skill of being able to master your body's internal temperature, so that you're not vulnerable to extremes of temperature. But you may want to try to master something else. And for me, it is about mastering a heart-centered or soul-centric life, so that I am never letting fear be anything other than a useful messenger. And that's the other thing that happens when we open to our intuition or our intuitive intelligence, is that fear becomes a friendly ally. Fear becomes a way to navigate us back to the heart-centered truth of what we are, which is infinite, unlimited consciousness. So when fear rises, we can simply say, oh, I've deviated from the path. I'm not vulnerable to this fear. This fear is simply trying to bring me back to the truth, the eternal and only real thing that there is, which is love. So a fear then becomes part of your intuitive toolkit, and you can, when you notice fear in yourself or others, not react to it from that personal place, but look at it archetypally, and you stop taking everything personally. And I talk about this a lot with my priestesses, is that true freedom is when we stop taking other people's behavior personally, and that we are able to live from that archetypal or spiritual sight view. And that's what it is to become more energy, less matter, is that we can see the energetic patterns or the non-dominant sense patterns of meaning, which is spiritual sight. This is how the mystic views the world. It's incredibly powerful to live from this place. It's incredibly exciting to be able to put down the limited human belief that you can only make sense of reality through the five senses, and to actually not only just know that you're intuitive, but to live from that heart-centered reality. So we've gone a lot of places there, but what I really wanted to do was sort of give you an opportunity to look at perhaps where you might be living inside of fear. Sometimes fear is very, very obvious, but sometimes fear is masquerading as love. Sometimes fear is just preventing us from expecting, demanding, and creating more for ourselves, so that we're perhaps taught that the highest version of success is finding someone to love you, marrying, buying a house, getting into debt, having a car, having a couple of kids, getting a cat. I just got two this week, so that example's in my mind. And that if you've got all of that, then you should be grateful for what you've got. Now, gratitude is the highest form of receivership. Gratitude in its spiritual sense is not the same as accepting far less than you're worth, accepting a little life. Because it doesn't matter what you do with this 3D reality. If it truly is just a projection of your consciousness, then do whatever makes you most blissful. We were talking about this in my group yesterday. Do whatever makes you blissful, because that is actually your life's purpose. To serve through your joy. Find what you love doing the most, do it as often as you can, raise your vibration, ergo serve the whole freaking planet. But what if you are actually just inhabiting a life that you are expressing gratitude for as a way of not looking deeper? So this is a little bit controversial, because it's asking you not to dismiss what you have or what you've been given or what you've created for yourself, and not to be ungrateful, because in fact the highest way that we can express gratitude is for the things that are not yet in our life, or the reality that we have that is not entirely in keeping with our vision. If we can be grateful for the shit, then we can be grateful for anything. But what if you are using gratitude as a way to accept a bullshit rules life? That because someone else told you that the definition of success is finding a boyfriend or a girlfriend, getting married and buying a house, that you think you've got it made, and you haven't actually pushed beyond that to see what actually, if my highest version of success has nothing to do with somebody else's desire for their life. What if that highest version of success is just a really effective way to control us? And I'm not talking about there being some kind of external power out there that is, trying to overlord us and keep us all small and petty. That is all within us. We are our own worst enemy. It's the ego within that is acting as this voice which will masquerade as love and will say to you, you have it all. Don't mess this up. Don't risk losing this by going further. Don't follow your soul's yearning. I can hear you trying to follow your soul's yearning. You're going to lose everything you have. If you go along that path, there's a good chance you're going to lose everything you have. And that's what the ego will say to you. Don't rock the boat. Don't risk losing this very nice, polite little life. There's nothing wrong with it. And I'm not asking you to question the validity of your marriage or your family or your relationships or any of that stuff. But what else is possible? What else is possible for you beyond fear? I'm going to bring this back to intuition again, because intuition is always the answer to any question that I pose. If you are handing your life over to the infinite, that's when your intuition turns on. And that's when you start living a life in accordance with your infinite nature. I know that one of my greatest joys is being a mother, having a lovely home, having kittens. The domestic life is beautiful, and I'm so grateful that I have it. But I'm not using that gratitude for that to stop me from going further towards what my soul is yearning for, because I got big stuff to do here, baby. And I ain't got big stuff to do here because I'm the answer to the world's problems. I got big stuff to do here because that's my freaking joy. The thing that sets me alight, that pulls me out of bed every morning with this passion, this intensity, is this yearning in my soul to go further towards that mystic's voice, to go further towards that intuitive intelligence, because I know that I am capable of being that living, breathing demonstration of infinite consciousness if I just keep going towards that voice. And I'm not afraid of that. And I'm not afraid of what that might mean, because I've handed my life over to the infinite and I've said, use me. So ultimately it doesn't come down to me. There's nothing to lose because this is all an illusion anyway. So if your fear is masquerading as love and trying to tell you to just be polite and nice and stay where you are, because actually if you go towards that thing, then you might risk losing what you have, then I invite you to meet that fear, because that fear is just even more bullshit. You know, the closer once we go through the big fears, the fears get really, really clever and sneaky. And that's something to be observant of, is that your fears will start to behave more as the saboteur, less as the victim and the child, which are quite obvious archetypes, and start behaving more as the saboteur. And it's then we have to become very, very clear on when we are stepping back from what our soul is calling us to do, because we're afraid of losing what we have. So we stay small. All right, I'm going to leave it there. That went everywhere, man, and it was so exciting. And I love it that you get to, I get to talk about this stuff. And I love that I was going live on YouTube at the same time as going live on Facebook, and it almost worked. We only had a little glitch at the beginning there. I'm going to be jumping on to I Am Spiritually Fierce. If you're not a member of the group, please join. We are going to be doing a group fear releasing using intuitive tapping, because it's hard, it's fast, it gets shit done. And we're really going to go to those big bullshit rules, as Katie said, those big bullshit rules, to use Vishnalakiani's term, where we have been indoctrinated at such a deep level to believe that if we question when we have the things that someone else has told us are success, that we're being ungrateful. Then we feel guilt and shame. You see how this all plays in together? Let's move beyond that cycle. Mwah. Have the most beautiful evening, and please come and join me in 10 minutes, 7:30 Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. I'm going to pat myself down so I don't look quite so shiny, and we're going to have an incredible fear releasing ceremony. Thank you for joining me.